Welcome back to Cigar Time, your ever so friendly show all about premium cigars. And yes, it's me, but don't get used to this. I'll be here for just a few more weeks, and just in time to get away from this lousy cold weather and get back to Florida.
Well, at least
70 degrees
at
out.
least when you're here, we get the intro right.
What? You know what? Actually, yeah.
You're basically what you're saying is Rob doesn't do the intro right.
Well,
Are you hearing this?
he gets distracted right before. Like at 2
I wonder why.
At 2, he gets distracted
So
every
this is
week.
why you sent me that email. Don't start watching the show until you're 2 minutes in.
Yeah.
You didn't want me to see the intro on YouTube, our channel on YouTube. Our channel is on
forget it.
YouTube still,
I got to give Rob credit. He does the intro.
prefers cash.
He's
And then that's
always
it.
certain, and he's sometimes right.
Yes.
Is he more right than wrong?
No.
Sometimes,
What do you get?
but he's always
Oh,
sure.
okay.
So I just wanted you all to
always
understand.
short?
In a
Short.
few weeks,
Well,
if you don't
that's
see
short
me on the
too,
show,
but I wasn't
I haven't expired.
Chocolate cherries.
My good till date is still being pushed forward. Welcome back. What are we doing today, Mr. Rob?
We are doing the H Upmann Heritage,
This is an
By
H.
A.J.
Upmann
Fernandez.
done by A.J. Fernandez.
AJ Fernandez.
Can we cut him now?
Yes.
Okay.
As you may notice, if
Thank you.
John manages to give us a close-up of this at some point or after,
Let me get out of the frame.
this is one of the better-looking dark wrappers I've seen in a long time. It's not lumpy. There are veins, but they're not thick.
No.
The seams are nice and tight. The construction on this is actually phenomenal to the eye.
What's the mileage?
You mean the price?
I thought you were
No, you
describing a
use
car.
a car, yeah.
That is pretty nice.
Well, you can,
Is it a Nic- is
you
it all
can get a
Nicaraguan?
high miles per gallon out of this
Is
cigar.
it all Nicaraguan, Paul?
No, it's not. The filler and binder are Nicaraguan. The wrapper
not,
is
yeah.
Brazilian Matafina,
Not the fina.
not
Really?
the Arapiraca that gets used more often, which is spicier and sweeter. This is more of a earthy baking spice kind of wrapper. That's what Matafina gives you. It's from a slightly different area. Matafina actually describes the area that they're growing it in.
Like the Baja.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've actually, a long time ago,
We did this.
about 18 months ago, we did this cigar.
Yeah.
When it was
When it was,
newer.
when it was
It
new.
was, I actually, no, it had not even come out yet.
Available, yeah.
It was before the
Yeah.
cigar was available.
Yeah. Tim was here.
Oh, okay. I might have been.
So
You
we
were here.
get
You were
we
prior.
get to see how it holds up.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, from the first draw, it's pretty tasty.
My cigar is not perfectly round. It's not.
Well, it's semi-pressed.
It's, I've been,
Neither are you
that's
perfectly round.
Yes, I am.
Oh.
Very round.
Oh boy, that's a high hanging curve coming in. Oh, man.
Go ahead,
No,
swing away.
No, because some of the words are probably not prime time
Yeah.
listenable.
I must be off my game. I'm not sure what.
What?
I'm
What are
not
you
sure
talking
where.
about?
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not sure where Paul's going with that. So
Yeah.
I must be off my game.
Yeah.
Usually you anticipate me and mock me in advance.
It's so easy to do.
It's true.
Well, I'm predictable. Well, not really.
Yeah, you know, I've noticed something on this panel, since I haven't been here in such a long while, that it's easy to get to everybody except Moose. Moose is probably the least likely guy that you can get to. The rest of you, piece of cake.
Yeah.
Moose, not so.
Yeah. It's all right.
He's anchored. You can't knock
Somebody's
him off
got to
his
be
base.
normal
I
over
could do
here.
3 minutes with
He's
that.
more
scary.
experienced.
What am I supposed to do
I'm
now?
getting. I'm getting first impressions. I'm getting a. I'm actually getting a. Not,
First impressions yet.
dude, I have a first impression.
You have an impression.
I do.
Don't hold him back.
I'm getting a wine taste to it.
And you know, 18 months ago when we first smoked this cigar,
Yeah.
you and I both commented on that too.
Yeah.
And
Remember that?
I do because it's such a distinctive flavor.
It is.
And I don't believe, although it's possible, I don't believe they're using wine in the process. Maybe in the Bethune.
Yeah, but you wouldn't.
But if
You
they,
wouldn't
you
taste
wouldn't
that.
taste that.
No.
So it's
do you
just
get
the
it
nature
also?
of it's
Sort of
the
like
nature
red
of the
burgundy.
wrapper,
Yeah,
Red Burgundy is exactly what it tastes like.
yeah.
and that's coming purely from the wrapper.
And Scott and I, before we started, we got a hay taste from the foot, smell from the foot.
I got that and like almost like a chocolate cherry.
That's
Yeah,
why
yeah.
Is this
Yeah.
why my allergies are bothering me?
Maybe.
I had to come north to have allergies.
This is a hypoallergenic.
Yeah,
cigar,
Yeah.
It's
and it's
gluten free.
gluten free.
Gluten free.
gluten free.
Scott coined that phrase.
Is it keto?
Yeah, it is.
That was funny. People
Gives you
actually
no carbs.
people actually responded back to that. I put it on Facebook or something like gluten free cigars. Cigars still gluten free, and people are like, really? That's gluten? Are you serious? I'm like, well,
Dude.
yeah. I mean, technically, if you chew it, it's probably not. But
If you swallow it, it's probably not. But
yes,
there are not a lot of people eating cigars these days.
I don't know.
Not anymore.
I see some old timers. By the time they take the cigar out of their mouth, it looks like they ate part of it.
Well, that's true, and there are some cigars that taste so good you want to just
Yeah,
eat
you wanna
them.
use it.
That's
Yeah.
true.
some people do that. Some people buy them just to chew on them.
Yep.
They won't light them. They'll just not eat them, but they'll just do it to have something in their
We
mouth.
used to have a customer who used to get those big, like, almost the size
Like
of the
the digger?
Imperials, the
Yeah.
National Imperials, but they were Raleighs. Rollies. Remember
yeah.
Rollies?
Yeah,
Raleigh,
yeah,
Raleigh.
from I forgot his name. already.
Yeah, you know his name.
Puros
Puros
Indios.
yeah.
The old man.
And
He's
he,
gone now.
and he would get it and chew it and cut the back off, and then keep chewing it until it was probably about 2 inches, and then he would light it.
Oh,
Then he would.
Yeah, he would light it afterwards. I'm like, why?
if you really want to get the wine taste, retrohale it.
Really?
Yeah,
I haven't retrohaled yet.
yeah. Try the retrohale. You'll really taste
Yeah.
it.
Is it a common misperception that if you retrohale, you're inhaling?
Yes.
But you're
Because
not-
People that haven't done it much or don't know
Yeah.
how to do it assume that you inhale and then blow
No.
it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
because I did that with somebody, and they're like, "Well, you're inhaling that?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They're like, "You just blew it out through your nose." I'm like, "No,
Yeah.
all
They're
the pipes are
connected.
connected." You know,
Just go up,
Yeah, they're all
not down.
connected. Stanza.
Okay.
So I think that this is a very well treated wrapper. I think the fermentation and curing on this is excellent. And it brings up a thought for me. People talk about curing tobacco.
nice segue to yourself.
Yeah,
That was well done.
Segue.
Thank you. They talk about curing tobacco, aging tobacco, and fermenting tobacco almost as if they're interchangeable. You know, people who are not intimately acquainted with the process just know that it's something you do with tobacco. But those three things are about as different as they can be. Curing is really the simplest part, and that's after the harvest is done and the leaves are sorted. They put them on those long poles in hands of tobacco. A hand is 24 leaves. They stack those long poles in the barns, and the barns are real tall, so the heat focuses on top. And they add some heat at the bottom. You have a question.
Yes.
Bathroom's over there.
The hand. I'm working through. Is the hand the same amount of tobacco when it goes into the pilon?
Yes.
Okay. I was trying to remember how many leaves it was the other
once
day.
they're
My
Good.
head is always 24, right?
Yeah, and
Couldn't remember the amount
they
of
don't
leaves.
break up the hands until after the processing is all done.
Makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
The
Sorry to
only
interrupt
thing
you.
they don't do in hands is leaf sorting, because you can't. And stripping and
Yeah,
all
stripping.
of that. So that's curing. They put it in the barn, they let it get warm, they add a little extra heat if they need to with little charcoal fires in pits in the bottom of
I guess
the
that's why
barn.
it's called a curing barn.
Yes. And
I think don't a lot of them use gas now because you get charcoal, you get more of an aroma that could affect the flavor?
Yes, you do, and that's why there are fire-cured cigars
Yeah,
and
right.
not fire-cured
That's kind of
cigars.
what made me think of it.
However, it is those fires, whether they're charcoal or gas, that are the primary reason that we hear as often as we do about curing barns burning down and companies losing
Yeah.
hundreds of pounds or tons of tobacco.
I still don't get why that happens. I mean,
It's
if
old-
somebody knocks it over, it's still a dirt floor.
It's old, dry buildings full of drying tobacco
Yeah,
in a hot environment
it
where they
burns.
don't spray water.
It burns.
I guess. I guess it happens. I just.
And
Like
it
I
happens
still
every-
trying to figure out why a building burns when it's made out
Every-
of
every
concrete.
It
couple
happens every so often when
They're
business
not
is
made
slow.
out of concrete.
Yeah, whenever somebody's coming out with the next named cigar.
Yeah.
And
Be careful.
well, those curing barns are designed to burn down at strategic moments.
Yeah. Every 4 or 5 years.
Oh Lord, there
When
goes,
it's-
that, there
when
goes
it's-
that sponsor right down the drain.
And in off years, they
Were
got
they
their trucks
ever a
hijacked.
sponsor?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So, yeah,
So
that's curing.
what's going on in curing is basically the tobacco is giving up the things you don't want. That includes ammonia. It includes a whole galaxy of lesser naturally occurring chemicals that are in the tobacco that don't taste good. And it's giving up chlorophyll, which A, makes the leaves green, and B, makes them taste more grassy. So in the curing barn, they're giving all of that stuff up. The other important thing that's happening in the curing barn is as they open and close the little doors to let ventilation through the hot areas, they're also letting in ambient yeast on the wind. And the ambient yeast is what's going to feed the fermentation later in the process. So those little doors and the wind blowing through are really important for the final product. So that's curing.
And that takes 6 weeks, 6
Yeah,
to 8.
6 weeks, 90 days. Between 90 days and 6 weeks, depending on what you want at the end. Because less curing can result in more fermentation because you're leaving stuff in there that might
Right.
actually feed the fermentation.
Will they do that on purpose?
Generally,
Just to experiment?
yeah. Good tobacco processors and growers are experimenting all the time.
Yeah.
Try a different. I mean, most of the techniques in this business are 500 years old,
Yeah.
but people are constantly trying little tweaks that make things better. So we go from curing to aging. And I'm not talking about aging cigars, I'm talking about aging tobacco.
Yeah.
After the curing is done, tobacco is still chemically very active. They don't make it hot enough to ferment at the aging point. They lay it out on racks, they let it dry a little bit, and they just let it sit there at a stable temperature to let the chemical processes do their thing and stop. So that's aging. Fermenting is the next phase, and fermenting is all about letting yeast eat the natural sugars that occur in tobacco and some starches, and turn that basically into flavor. Fermentation produces volatile oils where all of the flavor in tobacco comes from. So, and that is the most variable part of the process.
Would you consider that the most important?
Well, if you
I
don't,
mean, they're all
if you
important,
don't
but-
cure it right, you're going to have ammonia in your tobacco no matter how much you ferment it.
So there is
It's
no.
just going to hang. So there is an important benefit to the curing end, and you'll have brown leaves instead of green leaves, which for some people is important. But yes, I would say the fermentation process is the most important because it has the most direct influence on the rest of the tobacco's flavor. And as I said, it's the most variable part of the process. Part one is what yeast and how much of it winds up on the tobacco. And that is rarely, in fact, never, by conscious effort. It's all about ambient yeast, whatever's local that blows through on the air. Adding yeast, which is a common thing in other industries like liquor and beer, is just something that hasn't occurred in the cigar business yet. And it has been a fondly held dream of mine that someday people will start using proprietary yeasts in order to get a specific flavor out of the tobacco after the fermentation.
How would you introduce yeast to the tobacco?
You'd have to blow it. You'd have to, in the same way that the wind carries it through while they're hanging, you would have to put powdered yeast and fans to blow it across everything that's hanging.
Could you have too much yeast?
Not really, because what happens is at a certain point the fermentation process produces chemicals that kill the yeast. So it stops naturally. You don't want to let it stop naturally. You want to modulate it. And that's what Bethune is all about. During that fermentation, spraying different things that either sustain a particular yeast and let it live longer and produce more of its flavor, or kill a yeast and replace it with another one that adds to the blend of flavors. So the yeast is important. Temperature is really important. If you ferment so that the pilons, the piles of tobacco, reach let's say a temperature of 90 degrees, an internal temperature, and that, you could argue that fermentation is complete. It's going to taste a certain way. If you take that same pile of tobacco and ferment it until the internal temperature is 100 degrees, it's going to taste totally different. If you went to 110 degrees, it would taste totally different again. And you can do it in very tiny steps. And part of that is why they ferment in multiple phases, so that they can take it apart, spray the Bethune that kills a certain yeast and helps a certain yeast, let it ferment, break it apart, put on a different spray of Bethune that does this same effect, but on a different species of yeast, and they just keep doing it. They call it sweating sometimes, because it generates a lot of water.
I think it might be important to point out that when you say the temperature that it reaches to, that's through naturally occurring, through the chemical process of the
That's
fermentation.
not heating or baking, that's fermentation. When you put 2,500 pounds, which is a typical pilon, 2,500 pounds of tobacco together in a tight pile covered, you have a compost heat.
Yeah.
And it generates its own heat. And over time, it generates a lot of heat. You know, when you're processing Maduro, you might get up to 125, 130 degrees in that pilon.
Now, how does the rising temperature affect the taste? Or is it just different tastes?
It's different taste.
I know the process to get to Maduro.
It's not like you could say it tastes like almonds at this temperature and it tastes like walnuts at that temperature. You know, it's not that precise.
How about strength?
Strength actually goes up with fermentation, and the reason that it does is it doesn't affect the nicotine content in the tobacco at all. So if you have a high nicotine tobacco and you ferment away a lot of the other chemicals, what you have is a whole lot more nicotine.
Stronger cigar.
So when you're doing this and you do it, let's say you do it at 90 degrees, you get a certain taste, and then you take that tobacco and blend it with other tobacco
That was fermented at a
at
different.
a different
They do
temperature.
that.
You're getting a totally different cigar,
That's why.
or than when you do it at 100 degrees or 110 degrees, but it's the same tobacco.
But
That's why you have.
But the variables
I know where
are
you're going with this.
infinite.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
you're changing the temperature of the tobacco, and then you're changing the temperature of some more of the same tobacco and combining them. So how you combine them has as much influence on the flavor as how you ferment them.
So you can take it at 90 degrees another tobacco and blend that cigar, and then at 110 degrees and blend it with the same tobacco from the other pile at 110
And
degrees.
now you'll have
you
a
have
more
two totally
complex-
different cigars.
You will, and if you blend those tobaccos, you'll have a much more complex and sophisticated flavor.
It takes longer and costs more.
It's
And that's why you
Yeah.
said how many different?
Well, if you
Variations are
do
there?
all the math, and I've done it, 400 million possible combinations to make a cigar.
that's literally that's crazy. It
And
really
this is where I've talked many times about the organization and keeping track of all this stuff. I don't know how they do that. It just
the
Talk
best.
to
unbelievable.
Placencia.
Yeah,
Well,
it's
and
amazing that they can keep track of all that
unfortunately,
stuff.
his savant genius in that area, a Dutch guy,
Yeah.
passed
Passed
away.
away, yeah.
But he was the most refined thinker about the fermentation process of tobacco that I've ever met. He did experiments. He did thermometers at multiple points in each pilon to see what it's like in the middle versus what it's like farther out.
Makes sense.
He measured the moisture in the middle where the fermentation was hottest to make sure the water didn't boil. And he just kept track of everything. And they had hundreds and hundreds of pilons. In the I said it's 2,500 pounds. They have hundreds of pilons in Placencia barns.
Yeah.
it's literally it is mind blowing of how you can do something like that, and you take some that's fermented at 100 degrees and others that are fermented at 90 degrees, and put them together, and you come out with this,
So
or this.
so
It's something.
think about
It's
people that
crazy.
you've known
These
that
guys
you
got to
would
be
consider
geniuses.
really good blenders.
Yeah.
Okay. Think about them. And think about them doing that. Not just saying, I'm going to blend a Nicaraguan with a Dominican and a Honduran
Right.
and a little bit of Brazil. It's way more than that. They have to
Yeah.
think through how each one of those leaves is going to get treated to bring the ultimate effect to the cigar. It's enormously complex.
Yeah, and people and customers just come in and say, "Oh, I like that cigar," or "I want a Nicaraguan cigar," or "I want a Dominican
or
cigar."
even it tastes like chocolate.
yeah,
You know, there are people that'll say that,
Yeah.
but they have no idea
Yeah.
what's going on in there.
They got it to taste like that.
it's fascinating. It's just science that it's crazy.
So break
really
it down. You could have a tobacco plant growing here and one here, and based on all the processes and everything that happens after that, if you just made cigars from those two plants, you could have completely different cigars, even though they were right next to each
yeah.
other.
Absolutely.
Same
That's
water,
where you get
Same
the
water, same
Yeah.
fertilizers, same
terroir.
terroir. And
It was easy for you to say.
yes, it was. I wanted to say terror.
That's one of the things that really attracted me to the industry about all that stuff and understanding it. And I think that's one of the, I told you I made the leap a while ago to started getting into looking at wines and all of the, not the exact processes, but all the things that matter are very
principles.
simple,
The
are very
principles
similar.
are the same.
And with coffee too, I believe. So that's why I get real fascinated with watching documentaries on how wine is made and all. It's very, very similar.
Yeah.
Fermentation as a process has been endemic to the human condition for almost ever, because yeast is everywhere, and spoiled food that's spoiled by yeast is sometimes better than food that's spoiled by something else.
Yeah, blue cheese.
That's a good example, except
Love
a lot
blue
of people
cheese.
don't like blue cheese.
What? Well, who are those people?
It depends on the blue cheese.
I don't like blue.
Well,
Who are those blue
actually, there's only one blue cheese that's officially blue cheese.
Oh, really?
There's one cave in France where they ferment cheese, and in order to legally be called blue cheese, BLEU, it has to be from that cave.
Like Ellie Bleu?
That spelling, yeah. But I don't think
See,
he
right
puts
back
any
to
cheese
cigars.
in his humidor.
One question I have, and you may have answered it one
He
time.
makes a lot of cheese from them.
How does the yeast get into these barns?
If you
I mean,
visualize,
does somebody stand by a fan and blow it in?
No. If you visualize a tobacco
Yeah.
curing barn, they're maybe 4 stories tall.
Yeah.
And all along
They have
all
vents
of the
and
walls,
everything.
they have little
Yeah,
trap
vents.
doors.
Yeah.
They open those doors for 2 reasons. They want to let whatever direction the prevailing wind is coming from to blow through the upper reaches to bring the temperature down a little bit. But while they're doing that, the prevailing winds are blowing in yeast because it's everywhere.
Well, that's what I didn't quite understand.
It gets there by itself. They don't
So you're
put
saying
it
if I
there.
open the front door here, yeast would blow in?
Yeah, absolutely. It's in the air. It's everywhere. It grows on anything.
So why is it so hard to brew beer?
It's not.
It's not.
It's hard
It's-
to brew good,
it's
hard to brew good beer.
It's hard to brew
Yeah.
for the same reason that it's hard to make a good cigar. Which yeast, how much, how long do you ferment it, how hot do you let it get, and when do you stop it? Affects beer the exact same
Are
way.
there different grades of yeast?
Many, and there are
Well, how do they
proprietary.
control that?
They breed them. There are people that breed yeasts,
Okay.
and
Well,
This
now we're getting into beer and wine and stuff, but
And-
it's all
and
naturally
most-
occurring with cigars, you're saying.
Yeah.
it's what we call ambient yeast. It's whatever
Oh,
yeast
yeah.
happens to be around. But if you think about the liquor business, almost every major liquor company has a proprietary yeast that
Right.
was bred 200 years ago, and they've kept it alive, like sourdough starter,
Yeah.
to be able to reintroduce it every time. And the value of that is consistency. If you have the same yeast all the time,
Yeah, that's
you
consistent,
have
yeah.
the same base flavor profile to work with.
Fascinating.
It is fascinating.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And
The
it's-
amount of science that goes into
It
a
goes
cigar.
into, you know, a $7, $8, $9, $10, $11 cigar.
Even a $2 cigar.
Yeah, same thing.
And
It's
some
crazy.
some people are just comfortable saying, "Yeah, I like this cigar, and that's all I need to know."
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
yeah.
it's
I
fine.
think most
And
That's
people-
there's,
fine.
no, and
I think
there's
that's
nothing
most
wrong
people.
with that.
Right. Yeah, you're probably right. It is probably as most
Yeah,
people.
nobody
but
gets
not
into
me.
the weeds. Most people don't get, no pun intended, but not many people get into the weeds about a cigar. They either like it
I
or
think
they
some of the
don't.
younger crowd is
Maybe.
is
That are
getting
just
Yeah.
coming to cigars now, and they just want to understand everything.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
Noah.
Yeah, Noah's
We
a
had a
perfect example.
customer-
A regular customer, young guy,
Asked a million questions.
new to cigars.
I love it when people do that.
Me too.
He asks questions, takes recommendations, and comments on the recommendations,
Yeah.
which helps us help him.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It is a fascinating industry. It really is. Guess that's why I've been doing it for 23 years.
You're a rookie.
I'm a rookie.
And I learned most of this
Well, I've been here
more or
longer
less
now.
by accident in the first year that I spent in Nicaragua, just hanging with the owners of cigar factories and watching everything they did.
Can you imagine? I've been smoking these things for 62 years.
Wow, that's a long time.
But I have seen the changes, both obviously in the three principal importers of cigars into this country and of course then Cuba. And it's very enlightening to see the modern processes because a lot of these things weren't as fully developed back then as they are today.
But they were there.
They were there. They were there.
So
But the care and attention, I think, are more here today.
And I also think in some companies, in the tobacco processing areas of like the big companies, they are able to work on consistency more than anything else.
That's why they have the advantage.
Yes.
Well, and that brings, I don't know if that improves the product, but it definitely makes it more efficient, which is more cost effective for them.
which makes it less expensive for us smokers.
See, I
I
think
mean,
what this
theoretically-
industry,
Theoretically, yeah.
I think what this industry gets away with a lot of is that word, consistency. We all know, and we're not going to get into names here, we all know certain companies that year after year are very consistent.
Right.
Yeah.
And we know others that
Or
clearly
very
aren't.
not.
But yet, that brand of the company that may not have the most consistent cigars still sells well, which means somebody 10 years ago smoked a cigar, they came back to it today, it tastes different, but because it's a brand, a name they know, they say it's good. And
Yeah.
to them, it certainly may be good.
Well, their palates may have changed.
Yeah, that's
So-
true.
Or
Our palates
their
develop.
palates might not be fine enough to detect the difference in
Yeah.
the cigar
Right.
that changed.
We all know people that started out smoking mild Connecticut shade cigars, and they've evolved, and now they're smoking Nicaraguan powerhouses. So, yeah, thank God that's happened,
Yeah.
or we wouldn't be in business.
It's always interesting to me, the little trends that come along in the cigar business that look like they're just going to be little trends and then they're going to go away, and they just keep trugging along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm thinking about is stupid sized cigars.
Yes, I was just thinking
Well,
that.
Well, yeah.
I
So
mean,
it's,
7x70s, 8x80s. Now there's a 9x90.
Yeah.
Somebody came out, I saw it in Quarter Wheel this morning, or yesterday morning, 100.
What?
100 ring day?
100.
Who has
That's-
100
That's more than an inch
I read
and a
that.
half.
I saw that too, and I can't remember
Inch
who
and
it
a
was.
half.
Probably Christian, but
Probably.
No, I don't think it was Christian. I think it was somebody else.
Well,
Oh, maybe, I don't know. But
the record still stands, and I'm not sure of the ring gauge, but I want to say 500.
What?
And this is a cigar that was made by Gran Habano. It contained 1 ton of tobacco,
that's like 10 inches wide almost.
19 feet long, and it costs $150,000 to buy it. But if you buy it, they fly you down to Nicaragua so you can watch them make it, because it takes many days to make it.
How do you roll that cigar?
What's the draw like?
Yeah, yeah, right? How do you cut it?
I'll come back to that. But
you
the
would
way
really get mad if you can't draw it. It's plugged.
It's plugged.
the way
Gotta
that
get-
you'd be surprised the way they roll it. You know the orange vinyl netting that they put up at
Yeah.
construction sites?
Yeah.
What they do is they bunch up like this thick a tube of tobacco and wrap it in that, and then make another one and another one and another one, and then cut all the netting out.
Like I do with a Christmas tree.
And then they put a new netting over the whole thing and apply wrapper to that the whole way.
God almighty.
So
Sounds like
it,
they're making sushi.
it also comes
Yeah.
Yeah.
it comes in its own coffin, which is 20 feet long.
How much does a coffin cost? 20 grand?
I don't know, but you're paying $150 for the cigar, so the coffin just comes.
How do you, seriously, how do you smoke
stick
that?
straws in it.
You can't.
Well, there is a way, and the only person that ever, they made 2 of them. They made one to put at the trade show one year, and they sold one to a guy who wanted to support troops in Afghanistan, and he sent it to a platoon with a thing that looked like a metal colander that went, like a cap, that went over the head of the cigar with 20 tubes coming out of it.
Yeah.
So the whole platoon could sit
smoke
and
it.
smoke
Yeah,
that
So
cigar
it's like
at
a
once.
hookah.
Like
A
a,
hookah
yeah, like a
cigar.
hookah. Yeah.
It's like a hookah with a 20-foot cigar attached to
Well,
the
that's.
end of it.
I guess that would be the only way. I mean, how could
Yeah, I
one
mean,
person? How could let's say
nobody could put it in their mouth.
Well, no, but even if you had like a funnel down to a tube, I don't think you'd be able to have enough lung power to draw on it.
Probably
Probably
not.
not. No.
How long would it take to smoke?
Depends on the person.
About
45
3
minutes.
weeks. 3 weeks.
A
Wonder if it burned evenly.
day. A day for me.
I remember in the store at the Partagas factory in Havana,
Right
they
with a
had,
flamethrower.
they had about a 10 or 12-foot cigar on a couple of tripods. I don't know what the gauge was.
It was thinner. I've
Yeah.
seen
Oh no, no, it
pictures
wasn't as
of
thick as this. No, no, I've actually
This
seen
was
it.
like that,
Yeah.
but
yeah,
really long.
yeah. And that I thought was the largest cigar.
Like the one you used to have hanging on the wall.
No,
Oh, that
this
was a
in
Joe
a
State, wasn't
factory
it?
in Cuba, and I believe that cigar is the longest cigar in the world.
Maybe. Well, it wasn't 20 feet long though.
No,
I would estimate. I know exactly where it was.
10 and 12. 10
I
and 12.
would say probably 10 to 14 feet. And I used to think, who in the hell is smoking that? But I still can't understand. Look, when I got into the business, there was only one company that even made a 60 ring. And
Really?
now that's like the number 2 or 3 seller. Nobody made 70s, 80s, 90s, and now 100. I mean, how do you smoke like even a 70? How do you fit it in your mouth?
I don't.
No, exactly. It's uncomfortable.
I did that one time when we had that crazy thing from Wiener,
Yeah.
whatever that thing was. But I did that just for
It's uncomfortable.
poops and giggles.
It's not fun to smoke.
As much as I like my
You did
60
say the
ring gauge,
S
that's
word,
as,
right?
He did.
as
No,
far
it's
as
a
I
poop.
go.
limit. You don't
It's a
like
poop and
bigger
giggles.
than that.
Because you
Yeah.
can't say shit.
What was that?
No, don't pay attention. Consider the source, pay no attention.
Yeah, good advice. So I think
You're
we're
not
far
paying any
enough in
attention
to
to the
do
man behind the
initial
curtain.
impressions now.
You didn't talk about aging yet.
Yes, I did.
You talk about for the aging after fermentation.
Well, after fermentation, the aging is mostly about drying because fermentation is a
Wet,
wet
yeah.
process. So again, they put it out on racks to dry out some. The rest of the aging happens in bales. It's not a controlled process. Once they put the tobacco in bales, they just let it sit until they're ready to use it. But there is chemical process still
Yeah.
going on in there.
Some companies will rotate the tobacco like every
While
week.
it's
They'll
in.
just like whatever on top they'll put on the bottom. The middle goes to the top, and
It's kind of like bourbon. When they're aging bourbon, different spots in the rack house
Yeah.
or the rick house
right.
yield a
There's
different
one,
flavor.
there's one guy that walks around and just turns the barrel
Yeah.
just a little bit. And
Right.
that's all he does all day long, goes down the rack,
What's he like at the end of the
But
day?
I think some
drunk.
some companies have experimented with just moving the barrels to different
Different
heights and
locations.
different places
yeah.
in the warehouse.
Yeah. But that same guy who's just turning them also does that part.
Another
of it.
question. Is tobacco ever truly aged out of doors?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
Firewalker.
aged, yes.
Okay.
In Brazil,
Okay.
in a certain area of Brazil,
Is it dry anywhere in Brazil?
it's not so much that it's dry, it's really, really windy.
Okay.
So they build up the piles of tobacco vertically instead of horizontally, and they leave the stalks on it.
No, okay.
It's like, I think you talked about this before, it looks like a teepee when they pack it up.
Yeah, it
Okay.
does, and it stands in the wind and rain,
Mm-hmm.
but it's just dry enough because of the wind,
Right.
you know, that keeps evaporating whatever liquid hits it
Hits it,
off, and they ferment that way, and it's very different.
Yeah.
I don't know of any cigars in America that use tobacco fermented
From
that way.
Yeah. I find Brazilian tobacco has a totally different taste.
It's unique.
There's nothing quite tasting like it.
No. And the two primary breeds of Brazilian tobacco are actually very different than each other, although they're both fairly dark.
Yeah.
And they're both typically used for Maduro wrappers. But the two kinds are called Arapiraca, which comes from one area, and Matafina, which comes from another area.
What
That
kind of
area-
seed is it? Like, is it
They're
a
different.
Corojo seed? Is it a
It's its own breed. They've been breeding tobacco down there long enough that it's not identifiable as a hybrid or a link of something else. Arapiraca and Matafina are breeds in their own right.
Is our Paraka mostly, is it a newer breed?
It's been used more recently.
Recently, yeah.
Matafina had been used for a
Right,
longer
yeah.
time. The reason they use more Arapiraca now is because it's spicier, and the people who like more interesting cigars tend to like spicier flavor profiles.
Right.
And you get more spicy and sweet out of Arapiraca. You get more earth, you get more cedar, and you get more power
Like this
out of
cigar.
Matafina.
This is Matafina, you said,
Yes.
right? Yeah, because
We
there's no
used-
spice in this.
We used
at all.
Matafina for a while, didn't we? On the
did.
Eduardo's?
We had some, yeah.
Yeah.
That was towards the end, yeah. Where the government chased us out.
Yeah.
I have a prediction.
Phillies tonight?
Phillies
No,
in,
not
Phillies
that
in
kind
four.
of prediction. I don't make predictions about sports. I make predictions about tobacco. And my prediction is there's going to be a new country on the tobacco horizon
Get out.
in South America, on the north coast of South America, and I'm talking about Guyana. And I'll tell you why. Right now, Guyana, which is agriculturally okay,
Small
is-
country.
it's one of the poorest countries
yeah.
in South America. Not Central America, South
South,
America.
South.
The average Guyanan lives on $6 a day.
Well, that's pretty good wages.
Compared to some countries,
Yeah.
yeah, $6 a day. They just discovered one of the biggest oil deposits in the world
Get out. Really?
right off their coast.
They won't be making $6 a day anymore.
So they're already, as they've begun to drill this, they're already the fastest growing economy on earth.
Get out. I would have never thought it.
And what they're already doing, and I think they took a page out of Saudi Arabia's book, but they're already thinking about things other industries they can do with all that money so that they have a sustainable long-term economy. And I predict tobacco will figure into that.
Even though typically that's a small cash crop. Tobacco is not a huge cash crop.
But it employs a lot of people.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I
good
would
jobs.
think because it's so sustainable and it can be an industry for such a while, but on a year-to-year basis, I wouldn't think that the profit or yield would be very high.
It wouldn't be big money, but it can.
But it's sustainable.
It's sustainable, and it's a
That
high
makes sense.
employment
Yeah.
proposition. You know, if you think about the whole process, from planting to picking to managing seed, and these are all different people. Managing the seedlings, harvesting and separating are different people. Hanging in the barns, I mean, it's
Well, they say
There
was
are
it like 300 hands
300 to
touch,
400,
300 to
yeah.
Yeah, I was
400
just going to
people
say, yeah, if that company.
touch
so
each
if
tobacco
you
leaf.
think about a little country like Guyana, putting a bunch of people in cigar factories will make a big difference in employment down
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Well, that's good.
See, people don't realize Cuba, which is probably best known for rum, cigars, and coffee,
And sugarcane.
and sugarcane, good. Cigars are a minor portion of it. It's not tourism's the biggest cash crop.
And after that, cigars are the highest profile, but
not the
nowhere
highest-
near the
no,
highest numbers.
Not even close. Now, let's talk for a minute, unless you guys have recently done this, which I doubt, the political climate in Nicaragua. Things are starting to get noisy down there.
Again,
Even though we don't read about it all the time up here, but the political climate in Nicaragua, where I would say a goodly portion of American cigars come from,
a very goodly portion.
could be threatened. You know, I've seen this happen in the 70s with the first Sandinista revolution. And my concern is, your ear's always close to the ground on this. What are you thinking or hearing?
What I'm hearing is that some of the growers, Plasencia in particular, are taking up more land just over the border in Honduras,
yeah,
so they can get stuff out. And there's certainly enough factory capacity in Honduras
yeah.
to take over production if they really shut it down.
I'm concerned more with the tobacco that comes out of the ground. I mean, you can build a cigar anywhere, but it's the feed product that's so important.
Well, and that's why they're looking at places most close to the border, because
Similar
the border
profile.
is largely formed by a river. And right by the river, the soils are largely the same.
Right.
So if you grow close to the river in Honduras or close to the river in Nicaragua, you're going to get about the same thing.
My guess is the political climate in Honduras is right now much better than Nicaragua.
It's more tightly controlled. You know, it's stable.
But
But
I guess
you know,
For now.
the street gangs are always an issue in Honduras.
any of those countries.
Yeah.
I mean, Dominican Republic, you got to dodge the motorcycles.
Oh my God, crazy down there.
Crazy. Yes. In Nicaragua and Honduras, you have poverty. You have all kinds of problems.
And political
unrest.
upset. Yep.
But right now, it seems a lot noisier in Nicaragua than it is.
And that's where more of our stuff is
I
coming
know
from
that's where
these
these
days.
things are coming from, and I would hate to see that. We lived through it, or I lived through it, because I'm old enough to remember, the original good brands, which were actually taking over market share. I know we've discussed this before, taking over market share from the Dominican and Honduras. I mean, Nicaragua was at the time producing cigars that rivaled or exceeded Cuba.
Right.
And that was back in the days when the Cuban cigars were really good.
You're talking the 70s.
Yeah, I'm talking about the first Sandinista revolution, which was
Yeah.
early 70s. I remember it well. And that's where most, the Padrones and a few other people, that's where they came from. And I would hate to see that end. What? So funny. Are you going to contribute something to this show?
No.
I just thought I'd bring that up.
No.
Why don't you contribute your first thoughts about this?
First, I already did my first thoughts. I was the first person to do it, if you
Well,
remember.
we're almost ready for our
Final. Well, still got a few minutes.
Did anybody else give it? I didn't hear any initial thoughts.
I didn't.
I didn't.
You heard mine.
Scott, why don't you? I
I
guess I'm
didn't-
supposed to say
I
something.
didn't hear
here.
yours.
You did. I told you.
I heard
we got a
it.
wine taste.
I heard
That's all
it.
you said.
I turned
That's
my,
your
I turned my
initial
hearing
That's
aid
my
off.
initial impression.
Wine.
Scott, why don't you?
I'm getting I can see where you guys are getting the wine from. I get like almost
Yeah.
like a tangy kind of, that would
A
make
red
me
burgundy.
think of that. A little bit of spice going on early on. That's what I got.
Moose.
I'm getting black cherry.
That's the
Red
wine.
Black cherry.
That's
That
the
would be the
wine
one, but
taste.
that's more black cherry to me. Chocolate and a creaminess.
It's a Wishniak cigar.
Yeah, wishing you had
I
cigar.
love
Yeah.
Wishniak. Black cherry Wishniak.
I-
Frank, if
I-
it's Frank's, thanks.
I've become addicted. I never heard of it before.
They have
Oh.
it in
Alan,
our.
Alan introduced me
That
to
was your
it,
first mistake.
and I instantly became addicted to it. So now it's in our vending machine, and it runs out all the time because I
Great.
buy it every day.
It's like the crack of sodas.
It really
That
is.
and Dr. Brown's.
Now, just so you know, the Wishniak was actually a Ukrainian cocktail. It was made of black cherry
Like the
juice,
Wojahoas.
carbonated water, and vodka.
Wow.
And when Frank's got a hold of
Yeah.
a Wishniak, they decided this would be a
like
great
making
soda
rocks.
without the vodka.
Oh God.
And
Well,
now
oh,
Frank's is owned by
big company.
Canada Dry, I
something
think.
like that. Yeah.
And they sell Canada Dry black cherry
Black- yeah,
Wishniak.
Wishniak.
It's in our vending machine.
God bless us. Go ahead. What's your impression?
My impression is there's almost no spice at all. I get the wininess big time,
Yeah.
but you know I'm married to a Jewish woman, so I'm used to wininess.
Oh God.
Oh God.
I could do 10 minutes with that line alone.
Send your letters to. care of
Paul Major.
Paul Major.
Care of cigars. But what I also get is a lot of earth and leather, and hints of cedar and coffee. Just hints, but they're there. This is, I think, a really complex cigar. There are a lot of different flavors going on for me. The construction is absolutely perfect.
Oh yeah.
The,
Burns
the burn
easy.
line is razor
yeah.
sharp. The ash is solid and firm. The jaw is terrific. That's my first impression.
All right.
Now let's have last
I
last
dare.
impression.
I dare to bring this up
You,
because we
these-
all know
I don't know.
price does not matter.
You are in for a
Woo!
surprise.
Florida's influenced you.
You're in for a surprise.
In Rob's world, price does
doesn't
not
matter.
matter.
Well,
so
he's rich.
Now I'm going to guess.
Wait a
I'm going to guess
Rob's
the price.
world.
of
Rob's
this.
world. Rob's world.
I'm going to guess nobody here actually knows what it is.
I do.
I don't know what it actually is, but I'm going to guess it's somewhere between $8 and $11.
Well, that's a safe bet.
Wow.
Unless it
Might
was
as well-
75
might
right
as
now.
well-
Narrow it down. $9.61.
I was going to
If
say you might as well say $1 and $40.
Well, it's not quite
well,
that wide.
but
So what is the
an
price?
Altadis product that isn't Monte Cristo is likely to be
Yeah,
between $8 and $11.
So what is the price?
$10.20 for a Toro.
Oh, I said $9.61. I wasn't far off.
No, you weren't far off it.
29
I was
cents
going to
off.
say $9.91. Something held me back. But I knew who made it, and I like you said, the Monte Cristo.
But this at $10 and change for a 54 ging.
Yeah, it's a big.
It's a big ring gauge Toro.
It's a generous Toro.
I would say good value for your money.
And considering what prices are, and they're not going to get in, I'm afraid to say, prices are not going to be coming down. Sad, sad, sad.
No. Although with the no longer companies no longer having to pay user fees, they might stabilize.
Stabilize.
slightly.
I hope so, because
Although
they didn't this year. Oh,
No,
man.
and we're still getting.
Yeah, I
We're still
know.
getting increases coming in.
Yep.
Well, along that line, I spoke with. They were talking about banning smoking everywhere, including cigar lounges. I got confirmation.
In
That's,
Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I got confirmation that's we yeah.
It's
I
a
mean
non-starter.
it's what we thought it was. I talked to one of our reps who knows the PCA president who's
Yeah.
in Harrisburg, or the ex-president.
You mean
Who's-
Veronica?
Yeah, Veronica talked to
Greg.
Greg, yeah, and he said, yeah, it's they do this every couple of years, so
Yeah. The thing
It's
is-
kinda what we thought.
And the Amish kill it every time.
yeah.
Well, and CI and Famous and whole rest
But
of them.
but the Amish have
Best.
big
Yeah, they have-
influence
Big
in
influence.
Harrisburg.
But they grow it.
Yeah.
They still grow tobacco.
So that's not a concern. But the I don't know if you guys saw or read any of the CRA, their comments about the. We talked about this before about they're trying to standardize the manufacturing
Yeah.
process, and the CRA really shot a ton of holes in it. So I mean, who knows what's going to happen? But it was a very interesting. If you didn't read it, it was actually really interesting. The level of detail they get to, and I bring it up because it's also a commentary on what the government, I'm going to say, tries to get away with. But you know, some of the things that have to be included just were completely ignored. First of all, the reason they wanted to do this was to reduce fatalities and injuries and health issues, and they didn't produce a single shred of evidence that existed. And they applied a lot of.
Of course, no one's ever been killed by a cigar.
No.
Right. Yeah. They didn't.
Even John Wick couldn't kill somebody with
Yeah,
a
cigar. Yeah.
maybe a pencil, but not a
Not a
cigar.
cigar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chuck Norris could though. Let's be honest. So anyway, so it was an interesting read. So the CRA really, poked some holes in it, and I mean it's just part of the comments, but it was like a 10-page comment.
But have you noticed the government really doesn't care or listen to things?
No, they don't.
They don't, but as in with the deeming regulations, there's a judge who did.
Thank God. The only thing bureaucrats in Washington listens to are votes.
And money.
Money.
Well, that's a given. But votes. I mean, this whole thing of some of the troubles in the world that are happening now, all going to be handled by this country as political.
Yeah.
I mean, which way is the wind blowing?
But I do sense that Joe citizens getting tired of being told what they can and can't
Thank
do.
you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
Thank God.
I mean, even some of our friends who are liberal are starting to be like, wait a minute, like this is getting a little out of hand.
Yeah.
So
Getting a lot out of hand.
That I mean, I don't know that affects anything
There's two
in
sets
the
of
short
laws.
term, but
One set of laws for one side of the fence, another set of laws for the other side of the
right,
fence.
yeah. But I think people are starting to see this.
Yes. Yes.
That's why I've said this before. I wanted to, you get tired of the just random taxes, like tax pizza. Who doesn't eat pizza? I want tax pizza at $1 a slice, and then watch
Yeah.
people get all up in arms about it.
Yeah.
Or tax beer and spirits.
Well, they did that with soda in Philadelphia. You saw what happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
They crossed the city
They just
line.
went there, like, okay.
Cigarettes, same thing.
Yeah.
They crossed the city line.
Well, that's why cigar stores and set up
Yeah, on the
shop right
borders.
along the border.
Yeah, of course.
It's smart.
But it's not the way this country was designed to run. It's
Not designed to run, but the founders saw it coming.
yeah, they did.
Yeah, they
That's why
did.
the Second Amendment exists.
Yep.
But it's so sad because it's supposed to be for the people, by the people. And what say do you have in the legislative process?
No.
You can't even trust your vote anymore. You don't even know for sure if your vote's going in the right count. I mean, it is scary. Even if it's not, which I doubt seriously it isn't, but even if it's not, it's not the democratic process we all signed up for.
Nope.
And that's the sad part. Again, I don't mean to get this political, but
Why not? We have 5 minutes to kill.
that's
Yeah.
true. Okay, how about those Yankees?
Well, they're sitting at home watching the Phillies.
25 rings. 25. I'm like, okay, well, when was the last one? Well, it was before. It was 2009,
What?
their last ring.
Yeah. It was. Yeah. It was more
That's the
recent than
argument.
ours.
That's the argument Giants fan come up with. 3 rings. You only got 1. Like, hey, you guys forget about the NFL championship games. You're only talking Super Bowl. What about before the Super Bowl?
Eagles won 2 of those in the 40s.
Yep. Yeah.
3 of
so
those.
how far back do we go? Only Super Bowls count?
3.
No,
They
I
won
said
3
So
of them in the
are we
40s.
going to have an undefeated
And the 60s.
season?
No.
They won
this
2 in the
team's not
40s
that
and
good.
1 in 1960.
Now the Eagles?
This team's not
Undefeated?
that good.
No.
They
will
won't
not.
go undefeated.
Who's going to beat them?
Who?
Jets on Sunday.
49ers.
Ah, the Jets.
Did you see the 49ers
I
dismantle
got
the
a couple nice
Cowboys?
cigars to
The
bet
40
I'm
you.
going to
Got
ask you a
those.
question there, Bill.
Are the
is
second
What are you
best team
smoking?
in the league.
And who's the best?
The Eagles.
No, actually at this moment,
Objectively, they're not. Not even close.
I believe the 49ers are the best team. Right now, this minute, the 49ers are better.
They are very good.
Statistically,
That's
they
because
are
the Eagles
better.
aren't playing to their potential right now.
No, they're not.
Right.
Clearly.
And if they
But
played, if
they
they played to
did.
their potential on paper, they could be, but will they?
The secondary is their weak spot right now. second, third.
Yeah,
is
Maddox
close.
being out kind of hurts.
Well, I'm losing Gardner Johnson.
What?
Gardner Johnson?
Yeah.
CJ?
CJ,
yeah.
GJ.
I was thinking you were talking about.
Here's the worst part: when
The
he
Great
signed
Wall
with
of
his
Georgia.
new team, he took it for less money.
I know.
Less money than what the Eagles were
He
offering him.
wanted out of here so bad. So sad. So
Guess he
sad. I
doesn't
hated
like
to lose him.
Philadelphia.
That's kind of strange.
It is.
Because you hear the opposite from like so
Everybody.
many
Well-
ex-players live in this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost
All right,
Jersey,
I guess
which I don't get.
we can start
I
to
don't
give
get
our
that either.
final review and then
Points.
spend the last minute or so a little light musical comedy or something.
We do that.
Okay.
Scott will
Slapstick.
juggle.
Moose, why don't you lead it off?
I can juggle.
I give it a 2 on the
That's why I said
power.
you.
Great.
Band.
1, 2, 3.
2?
2 out of 5.
In power. Yeah, okay.
power.
What did you give it in strength?
2 out of
2.
5.
2? Okay.
And I give it a 9.
Okay.
In the quality and the smoke and all that stuff.
Paul?
I find the winey taste backed off a lot. I think the earthiness
Mindy will be
came up a
pleased.
bunch, and the cedar came up a bunch.
Cheater.
And it has remained smooth and comfortable. It's not harsh at all. I put the power at 3. I find it a little stronger than you do.
Because he's a real man.
I give it a 9.5. I really like
Yeah,
it,
I know you do. I knew you
especially
would.
at this price point.
Yeah. Especially
Sorry.
at that. Would you mind saying that again?
Especially at this
Say
price
it all
point.
you want.
Sorry, Rob.
God.
Say it all you want.
I think I agree on the strength scale. It's about a 3. The whiny part has gone away. I'm starting to pick up on more. I'm not gonna. It's not cocoa, but more like a roast coffee kind of flavor on this. And now that you mention it again, Paul, I think I didn't recognize it until you said the cedar. So I agree with that. I'll give this a 9. I've had this cigar before, so I've loved it. Absolutely love this cigar.
Rob?
I agree with the 3. It's right. 2, 5, 3. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not.
Just over medium.
Yeah.
Just.
Yeah. Just.
Yeah.
The winey taste I still get through the retrohale. You were right, Paul. I did get more of the wine
No, I
through the
exactly
retro.
wanted to talk to the retro.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
I thought it was Paul.
It's on tape.
I agreed, but Art said it.
Okay.
I had
I
had
agree. I agree with
You
you.
all say balls?
Yeah.
I had the balls to tell you.
Okay. I agree with you.
Cojones, since we're cigars.
It's very good. I'm getting the cedar, and the I also get a barky taste from it.
A woof woof barky
Bark
or
as
a
in
tree
bark taste.
Only
from
you.
it. I know. I'm the only one who's ever tasted tree bark. That's just
Okay.
incredible to me. But
But what tree?
As for me,
it's, no, not yet. I give this. I agree with Paul. I give this a 9.5. I absolutely love this cigar. It's tremendous.
I go with the 2.5 on the strength, and I go with the 9.5 on everything. And factoring in the reasonable price,
No.
I think that adds a lot to it. So don't forget, the same channel, this same time next Wednesday. And again, thank you very much for your business and patronage, and we'll see you next week.
Smoke 'em if
Bye-bye
you
for
got 'em.
now.
Ciao for
Smoke
now,
off,
everybody.
smoke happy.
The smoke's short.